It's Oh My God, Am I That Old time. 25 years ago, Maniac 2000 topped the charts in Ireland for 10 weeks, making it the first, perhaps the only, homegrown club classic. You can text in and tell me how wrong I am about that. The Maniac behind Maniac, the 98 FM and iRadio DJ Mark McCabe, who will be appearing at Maniac 25 at the 3 Arena on the 16th of March and joins us now in the studio. Afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon.
Do you feel old now?
Well, hearing you put it like that, yeah. You see, I walked away from this track for quite some time.
Were you kind of a bit embarrassed by it, maybe?
Yes.
Why?
Fed up, embarrassed. Because when this track was released, it was a very, very different time in terms of, the music industry in particular. I mean, we were still, like, Napster was new. We were releasing tracks on CD, still cassette to a certain extent, but, there was no Spotify, there was no streaming. It was major labels were where it was at. There was no, independence or anything like that. And it was released in the landscape of, Westlife had just launched. Madonna was in her peak. They were spending hundreds of thousands on marketing. And here was this track that suddenly appeared from nowhere on an independent record label. And it just blew them all out of the water.
Yeah.
So they got really, really sort of upset and concerned. And it was kind of the turning point where major labels maybe reconsidered how that they were, A&R became different because it was more like, oh, well, there's actually guys in bedrooms making music.
Yeah.
And it's good enough. We can release it, It didn't need to be through a process of a producer, a big studio and so on and so forth. So, and, bands like Kings of Leon, Oasis were still, putting out tunes, and here was Maniac. So it didn't fit the landscape at all,
Yeah, but it chimed, and it obviously
it
chimed, particularly
did.
here. And so, why did you then become a bit? Because you must have been delighted when it took off.
For sure, yeah. I suppose because I probably had, bigger ideas in my own head as to where I could go. In my musical career.
Yeah.
And it was a real sort of bag to be carrying around.
I said, but you were like the Maniac guy.
Yeah, totally. And still,
Yeah. Well, that's true. You still are.
Still
but I suppose it's the thing you kind of have to accept and then go, okay, well, it was good.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll fast forward because I stepped away from it. I stopped gigging. I stopped doing all that stuff. And then it was 2015, the Electric Picnic. I was asked to perform. I decided I would. I didn't expect much, and it just turned into something just unbelievable. It was the first time I got the sense of what the track actually meant to people. It had matured a little bit. People had matured, and I stopped thinking about the industry and started thinking about what it was actually about. And ultimately what it's about is, you've put something out there and people appreciate it, and you need to respond to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I can understand that. Yeah, and you do see that with a lot of musicians, that they kind of, I'm sick of people just saying that X song or X album to me. And then you kind of, after a while, But
that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to go to a show and hear the big hit not played.
Yeah.
They're there for that, even if it's 20 or 30 years old.
Yeah.
You've got to serve your audience.
Yes. Well, no, indeed you do. And at the time, though, it came out, were you offered lashings of cash for it? Were you offered deals?
We almost got there. Yeah, we almost got there. We basically had a bidding war between two labels in the UK. So the UK became really interested in it. And there was a track, Oxide and Neutrino, which was sampling the theme tune from BBC's Casualty programme. So that was there. That was doing well. So they saw Maniac as potentially the next thing that would follow. But we weren't set up for it. We couldn't, there wasn't the administration in place to deal with major labels. And we had a meeting in a coffee shop across the road from Abbey Discs, and the figure was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it never happened for one reason or another.
But could you not have just said, yes, okay?
Unfortunately, it wasn't my call because it was signed to a label. But like I say, we weren't prepared for it. And I think it just became something. I mean, the figure was 150,000 sterling.
Yeah.
That's what they were offering,
Oh,
so it was big money.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how to deal with it. And I think they eventually just got to the point where they were going, look, this isn't doable because it's not,
Yeah.
we can't, it doesn't fit within our structure.
Yeah.
Here's an offer, sign the deal, there you go.
Yeah.
It didn't work like that.
Now, people of a certain age will remember Maniac 2000, but people of another age will go, well, that's the song from Flashdance.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us a bit
You're
about...
really old.
Yes. Tell us a bit about the genesis, because you weren't the first person to do a version of it, or a remix of it.
Yeah, so I mean, it was from Flashdance. It was Michael Sembello originally wrote the track. So, I mean, how it came about is in 94 or 95, might be 96, a group called Four Rhythm, fronted by Simon Fitzpatrick. They released it. They had a dance version of it. It had a different rap on it. It was a different type of track. But on that CD single, there was a B-side, which was a remix that was done by two other Irish guys, Tim Hannigan and Mr. Spring, who were a Soundcrowd orchestra. And they produced a 12-inch instrumental. And it had the hook, it had the Maniac hook, but the rest of it was just nothing, just instrumental. So we, in our pirate days, in a pirate radio station, were playing this track and had this kind
Pulse,
of...
wasn't it?
Pulse, that's right, yeah. So we had this party piece, which was to throw a rap on top of this 12-inch instrumental. And it just so happened that Al Gibbs was kind of the leading forefront DJ who, you know, as far as I'm concerned, started it, because he gave me the footprint and the template to kind of go on. And when I was doing gigs, you know, do my performance of it. We recorded it one night in the Temple Theatre, which was an old church that had been converted into a big rave venue. And we started playing it. And people just kept on requesting it. Then people walked into shops. Billy from Abbey Discs, who signed it, he knew there was a market for it. So he said, here, let's record this, let's put it out.
Yeah.
And that's where it went.
And so Abbey just wasn't just selling it, they were your label.
They were the label, yeah. So they had 14 or 15 releases, I think, over their lifespan. But that was the spot that we all went when we wanted new music. We'd go in there on a Friday, we'd sit down, he'd hand us a bag, Billy, you know, all the new stuff. We'd take it, we'd play it, people would go back into him and request it. So there was a long-standing relationship with that guy. So
yeah, and obviously it was huge in Ireland, but it was a hit in Scotland and north of England as well, certainly in clubs. Anyway.
And it still is, because they have the same kind of musical psyche as we do. So down in London, it's a bit more reserved and a bit more sort of drum and bass and a bit cooler. Yeah. Whereas up in Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, places like that, they're as crazy as we are. Yeah. So it's kind of I'm in Liverpool in June, so we'll see exactly.
Yeah, well,
how long
actually, but I suppose that's the thing about it, is that, and I don't mean this insulting it at all, it's not cool, but that's why people like it, because it's not cool. Yeah. And so it's kind of liberating because it's not cool.
Do you know what it is? It's if you don't strike me as the kind of person that would necessarily lose your mind to it.
I'm too old. I like the Flashdance one.
It's you should experience it once in your life, if you ever can, because it's a remarkable moment to see the way people react to it. It's just insane. People just lose their minds. Yeah. And it's something that's really rare. I mean, you can emote to a song, you know, whether it be Radiohead or Coldplay or, you know, a pop song, but there's something about Maniac and Ireland that it's really ingrained, and they get really into it, and they just lose their minds for 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah. And it's great.
Do you own the song, or did that get a bit messy, given there were various versions on versions almost?
Well, because it's part of Michael Sembello's work, and there he owns a big chunk of it, and then there were other people involved, so it's split. There's a publishing split, which is split between 4 of us.
Okay, all right. And was that kind of easy to work out?
Nope.
Or no. Okay, I probably won't press you on that.
Look, there's a saying, where there's a hit, there's a writ.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like I said before, we were not prepared for the way that it went and what it's become, and the fact that we're still talking about it 25 years later.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's how it goes.
Were there other songs that maybe perhaps were overlooked a bit that you might have produced, that because Maniac was just the blinding light in front of them?
Definitely. You're hitting a wound here, Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dear. I'm sorry. But no, but I bet people who might go to your gigs might go, well, who might be familiar with a lot of this. Yeah, a lot of your work.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm the perfect example of how not to do it, because I totally confuse my audience. And what you need to do is you find your audience and you stick with it. So my audience, as far as I'm concerned now, these days, is Maniac. But over the years, I've tried to appeal to loads of different people. I mean, I remixed for Gavin James, Nervous. That went really well, went huge across Europe, and I got bookings to go and play in places in Europe based on that remix. But that was a total Kygo vibe, and didn't mean anything to anybody here, really. It was still Maniac. So yeah, that hurts. Yes. When you put so much time and effort into things and you have big hopes. But look, Yeah. That's how it goes.
Well, I mean, but that's not.
Really
there's
lucky.
more than one. Maybe there's an Irish Mark McCabe, but there's another Mark McCabe that's operating. In Europe.
And maybe someday they'll all come together. Yeah, and it'll all make sense.
Yeah. Who needs it to make sense? Anyway, congratulations on 25 years of that.
Thank you very much.
And that is taking place on the 16th of March in the Three Arena.
That's right, yeah.
Mark, thanks a million for coming to talk to us today.
Pleasure.